So, this is my third year in Startup Istanbul. And I think every time, I come over here, it actually gets very exciting and interesting. Do I get a clicker? I know I'm one of the presenters, but they never gave me a clicker over here, so I don't know how that's going to go. Every year, we come here, we're always looking and seeking new entrepreneurs, and we're looking for stories to tell and to experience as well throughout the time. But, every time is different. And every time is basically as exciting as we would expect it to be. But there is one thing that I've seen in all of the entrepreneurs that I've mentored or I've seen in different events or different accelerators that may stop them from taking the next step or the next big step. But before I tell you what is that and how do we get over this, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know who's that? Jack Sparrow, right? All right, so have you received your Post-its? Pens? All right, so I need you, please, to find a partner who's sitting next to you. Just do that. Find somebody who's sitting next to you, or you can change your place and find another partner. Okay, are we good? Don't worry, it's gonna be easy. Do we have pens? Okay, so your next task is to basically look at the face of the person who's sitting next to you. Unfortunately, you didn't get your Post-its, so you can do it virtually or on the phone. That's great. It's a good idea, maybe over the phone. Look at their faces and try to draw a portrait of their face in 1 minute, and we're going to have music on for 1 minute, and that's your time. We're going to expect the 2 drawings. Let's start now. You can do it. Don't overthink it. Seconds. Can you help me count down, Ozan? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Stop! Okay. So, that's very exciting, and I see you're laughing. I hope that this is a good thing. And one more step before we end this. Now, your next task is to take that Post-it and give it to them as a gift so they can see the art that you have just created. Share it with them, please. Share the art. Do you like it? Is it beautiful? Wonderful. Have you got yours, sir? Does that your new ID photo? Okay. So let's see, why have I asked you to actually do this? I've run this exercise many, many times all around the world. And every time we get that reaction of people laughing. Every time we ask, you should start to draw, and everybody just starts laughing. And then I start looking at faces, and some would actually take time before they get started. They're overthinking, should I do this? Should I not do this? But the most common thing that I've seen that people apologize before they draw. They say, I'm so sorry. Did you do that? Who actually apologized before? Okay. So it's like they're so afraid of offending the person, especially if it's a woman, right? And the man is drawing, and then it's always so embarrassing to do that. This is really exciting, and I think I wait for that moment every time. But what's really happening here? When it comes to teaching entrepreneurship and creativity, and enabling people to do that, there is always that fear of not doing so well in everything that we want to do. We want to be perfect, and we don't want to fail. Who likes failure? Nobody does, but it's part of our lives. And the only ones that actually don't really care much about that is the ones that I'm going to share the slide with. But these are a couple of folks in one of the corporates in Saudi Arabia. They drew each other, and then they didn't talk to each other for the rest of the day after that. They laughed in front of me, but they didn't talk to each other, and the picture would actually tell more about that. But children don't have that problem. So why do we have that problem? Why do we hesitate before we do anything new? The thing that I hear all the time, we're not trained. I have a different technical education. I'm not an artist. Why should I do something that I'm not good at? And that is what stops startups, people in general, and corporates from innovating and coming up with anything new. So in any corporate and a big setup, when you're bringing something new, it's a panic mode. It's different board meetings, and we need to put a strategy, and the strategy would take about a year or maybe more, and maybe the project will never be executed. While if they tested that, and they just attempted, then things would have been different. And that's the difference between them and startups. But also startups have this tingling, I just want to do so well, right? And that fear of failure basically haunts them for a very, very long time. The reason for this is our cultures. The fear of being judged, or being actually told that you haven't done what you're supposed to do. You have family, you have your peers, you have everyone around you that will actually be looking at you. So how do I get rid of all of that? And the only problem here is that when you start a startup, you have to know that failure is basically built in, whether you like it or not. And our attitude in that should be, we expect failure, not fear it. Because when you expect it, you know it might come, and you know it's part of the process, and you internalize it. And when you're okay with it, and you know it's a step to learn, then you're no longer afraid, and then you become empowered. And there's a scene that I've seen the other day, and if you know Indiana Jones, there's a part where he goes over the ledge. Have any of you have seen that one? And he goes this way. It's exactly how I'm feeling now, feeling scared of falling in front of you. And he goes, but then suddenly, there is something that appears in front of his foot. What I'm thinking over here is that startups, when they do the homework, when they understand the customer's needs, when they really go out and they test in smaller portions, they basically reach that confidence, and they're no longer jumping to the unknown. So it is a calculated risk. It is an affordable loss. You know you can afford to do that without ruining the whole thing. And that's really key for us to understand as entrepreneurs and as people dealing with this. And what's so interesting about failure, you can't study it. Did you ever take a class in college about failure? Or have you ever heard about a course that teaches you how to fail well? There isn't really much that has been done over here. So failure is an internal feeling that we go through. We only learn through experiencing it. We only learn by doing it and acting and then failing and learning and internalizing this and then going forward. There's a very interesting example or a metaphor of a trampoline that one of the Babson professors actually uses over there, and he says, for you to get really high, you need to get low in a trampoline. So as much as you push low, you probably can go really high. And with time you exercise, the first time you're scared, and then the second time you get better, and you learn the skill, and then you start becoming so creative, and you do acrobatic moves, and you just get better at it. And that's what all the game about getting over failure is all about. It no longer registers in your head as failure. 2 days ago, there's a gentleman who's here in the room asked me about my top 3 failures. And what I said that day, I really can't remember. I do have a lot of mistakes. I've done so many things in my life. I've seen so many mistakes, but I no longer register them in my head as a failure. And it was so difficult for me. If you asked me 20 years back, I would tell you, yes, I've done this and I've done that, and I failed here, and I feel devastated and miserable about it. But it no longer registers this way. And it becomes part of an experience you add to your personality, and you widen the dimensions of how good you can become or how much you can actually reach with experiencing more. I want to tell you a very funny and interesting story about a startup. So this is a startup in Massachusetts. It's about three students who one day decided to do a company, and the company actually does portable grilling charcoal. So they deliver it to you, take it with you everywhere, since barbecue is so common in US. They actually bought tons and tons of charcoal. And they started to publicize and talk to people, and they built the website and all of that. But the company didn't do well. They couldn't sell anything. It really failed miserably. So they sat one day deciding, what should we do? What can we do? And it was really interesting that the three guys, they had this idea, and they said, okay, charcoal. What can we do with charcoal? They have these loads that are actually packed in front of them. And they remembered a part where kids, long time ago, and still until today, during the holidays, if the child did not do well, the parents would put coal or charcoal in their socks, the one they hang, for Christmas. So when they go and look for something there, they find charcoal and their hands would get dirty. And they get a letter that tells them, you still have time to correct and make things better. It's so mean, but it works. It does, and it works. So that's what they thought of. They started this company, and they call it Naughty Coal, for naughty kids, to correct, their behaviors. And what this company does is basically they pack it in packages. You send them as a parent, the name of the child, and they send them a box, and the box comes with the bag, and it has the letter, and it has the outcomes, and what hasn't been working, and what is expected from the child to do. How did they test that? They put an ad on Group Home, and then suddenly the parents' requests started to come in an unexpected way. It's such a simple idea, right? And it was a joke, actually, and that's how it started. And then they couldn't really keep up with the orders, so they decided to expand and start the company. This company has been running for a few years now, and they have the second product, which is 12 letters from Santa, and they are building an empire around this concept. And this is how they reframed, a certain failure at the beginning of the venture into something very interesting, and that is actually worth a lot of money. Very interesting story, honestly, and I always look at startups when we ask them to look at the product and the current one, why it's not working, and what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and there is nothing wrong in shifting. Startups hate the word failure. They don't like to say failure. They say pivot. Have you heard that word before? We pivoted, right? Or we're success in the making. There is an acknowledgement that we need to have inside our hearts, that this didn't work, and this is what we've learned, and you're lucky that you have learned because others didn't learn whatever you actually have achieved. So it's all about taking actions and taking the next step. And it's all about deciding that this is what I'm going to do, what am I doing today, what problems do I solve, and who are the customers that I'm doing this for. The question that I want to leave you with, at the end, is basically you as entrepreneurs, or wannabe entrepreneurs, or even corporate intrapreneurs, and people that are starting new things. You either want to be an entrepreneur, you do new things, you bring ventures to the world, or you decide to become an entrepreneurial leader. An entrepreneurial leader is able to identify what's not working in the world and what's not working around us. And how do I need to change? And you identify these gaps and you identify these problems, all the time, and it becomes part of your DNA. And that's what we talk about, is bringing the DNA of innovators. How do I become a DNA by practice? How do I become a DNA as a person and as an entrepreneur and at work and not differentiate between the two? It's so difficult. People differentiate this life from our normal life. And we always look at people like Steve Jobs, for example. All right, he was kicked out of Apple, right? And then we look at Oprah. She was actually rejected from that first job that she got. Steven Spielberg, who did the best movies, was rejected multiple times from film school. So people say, oh, these are just the outliers. These are not public, and these are not normal people. We can't do that. But that's not true. All of these people have lived a life that we are living today. The only thing is that they acted, and execution is the key that will drive you, and it will take you to the next level. So how much are you ready to act and execute if you see an opportunity ahead of you? How much are you willing to try, and how much are you willing to lead? Not just become an entrepreneur, but a leading one who will change and become an example for all of others. So this was just a very simple message about failure. I'm not encouraging you to fail and fail, but I'm encouraging you to accept it when it happens, and to see it when it's coming, and to be able to just internalize this and be okay with it and get up right away so quick and never surrender for that. Because surrendering for failure, it's basically the end. Because this is when you quit and you decide that I'm no longer fit for this game. So hopefully you'll all become some entrepreneurial leaders, and I want to leave you with that and really enjoy those sketches and post-it that you have drawn for each other, and hopefully that will remind you with a small experience. You probably were scared of it, but you did well, and nothing happened. And everything in life starts with small steps. We tend to make them really big. We think that every problem is super huge. Yet if we start small and we just dissect it, and we start doing steps for it, things become easier. And that's a message for all, not just entrepreneurs. So wish you the best of luck, and you will see me more and more for the rest of the day. And just keep going and be entrepreneurial leaders and enjoy that. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for your time.